Three friends and I travelled to the far west of Sydney. We explored all the strange sights and stories that the Blue Mountains has to offer.
The small arms factory was established in 1912 to meet the military production needs of the newly federated Australian military forces. Began producing 303 rifles in 1913 and produced the 303s all the way up until 1945, continuing on refurbishing them for army use until 1957.
So the need kind of started from World War I?
Slightly prior to World War I. It followed Federation, where it was determined that previously small arms were purchased from England. However, it was determined that in a time of war, shipping may not always be as consistent as it would be in peacetime, so it was absolutely imperative to have the means to manufacture weapons of defence on Australian soil.
This machine was part of the original 1912 contract. It was made by Pratt & Whitney. We're very lucky that being a government contract, they marked everything. Every machine has a little tag on it to indicate that it was actually owned by the government. So we've actually got 2 photo albums showing all the machines that were used in the original contract. This machine is actually a profile mill. People talk about profile mills now and everything's automated. This did the same job, but everything was done by hand. So you had a template there, you would have had a job in there and a second job under there. And the idea was that this template would limit what cuts were made on the job. So each thing was moved by hand, moved that way by hand there, and then this one would move that way backwards and forwards. So it was up to the operator to keep inside the template. The actual template there is for the socket for a 303 butt. So that's the end of the receiver, and that's where the butt would fit into that socket.
So the Small Arms Factory Museum has a tremendous focus on preserving artefacts and stories especially. This service rifle is the L1A1 SLR, or self-loading rifle. It replaced the 303 in 1957 and was the Australian standard infantry small arm from 1957 until 1988. In order to meet current New South Wales legislation, every firearm on display in the museum has been temporarily deactivated. In practical terms, what this means is every firearm has been disassembled. All operating components such as firing pins, springs, magazines, springs and followers have been removed. The firearm has been reassembled so as it still appears to be a functional firearm. The rifles are secured to the walls using high-strength steel wire. Pistols are held behind shatterproof glass, all of which is connected directly to a back-to-base security alarm system. In terms of the factory's impact on the town of Lithgow, the benefits have been immeasurable. The time was that almost everyone in Lithgow either worked here personally or knew someone who did. In many ways, the entire town was built around the economic prosperity brought to Lithgow by this factory.
After a visit to the museum, we moved on to an abandoned site in the middle of nowhere. Old bunkers for anti-aircrafts mixed with the nature of the bushland. It was a little spooky.
To meet this threat, especially considering the extreme military importance of the small arms factory, several anti-air gun emplacements were established around Lithgow to meet this defence requirement. Unconfirmed rumours of the time from several people working at the factory say that Japanese Zeros were occasionally spotted flying above the local area. The museum today continues to provide a tremendous benefit to the town of Lithgow by being one of the largest tourist attractions in the general area. When polled, the majority of tourists who come to visit the factory have explicitly stated that one of the main reasons they came to Lithgow was explicitly to see this factory museum.